Well, back with us for another legislative update, Representative Dave Maturen. Good morning, sir.
Morning to you.
Welcome back. Catch your breath after the election, have you?
I thought I had it caught, and now we're running a 100-yard dash. It seems like every day. So.
Well, man, it's all of a sudden a hurry up thing before the holiday break, right? And so the schedules are packed.
My first lame ducks.
Yeah, right. Let's talk about this pension thing for a second. That's made quite a bit of news and kicked up some snowy dust, I guess. And the police chief and the sheriff were here the other day decrying that, actually. What's happening here?
Well, we've got a 13-bill package introduced to essentially create a local unit of government retirement act. And I sit on the local government committee. We got handed that particular task to take a look at that. We had a special meeting the other day, the second meeting that week, and took a bunch of testimony from not only the sponsors of the act, but some of the municipal folks. I was running dual committees at the time, dual interests, so I left a little bit early when we resumed in the afternoon from our morning session. And I know there were some folks that had some questions and concerns about it that also testified. Essentially, I think it's a worthwhile attempt at wrapping the legislature's arms around the fact that some communities have overpromised and underfunded their retiree health system. It's not the pension system this time, but we're looking at retiree health, and a matter of trying to make sure that benefits that were promised are going to be there. Not only fair to taxpayers, but also fair to retirees, and certainly fair to the next generation that comes up that sometimes is stuck with these bills that current municipalities, even legislature, go ahead and get themselves into, and then turn around and find out they can't pay for it. So,
what's the rub here with what is causing the dust?
Well, I think they're looking at retiree health plans being funded just like they are with pensions.
Yes.
And if the health plans are more than 80% funded, of which I believe there's maybe 5 counties that are 80% funded, a few municipalities at all, and just being concerned that all of a sudden the general funds are going to be using more and more to pay for retiree health than providing services that the people demand. I mean, when they pay $1 in taxes, they'd like to get $1 in services, right, and not spend 60 cents in services and 40 cents out of every dollar funding retiree health benefits that really don't go to fixing roads and providing police and fire and all the other services that folks demand from the municipalities. What's
the alternative?
Well, the alternative is trying to fix the system. I'm not sure if they're looking at the right metrics or not. I noted in committee the other day that before I left Kalamazoo County, I thought had taken care of our retiree health issue by closing retiree health to new employees, so they would know day one, don't expect it. But making sure that we put adequate money into the fund, additional money into the fund, so that the existing retirees and the current employees, who then would be retirees, would be able to have those benefits that they presume to have. But when you look at the snapshot, say for Kalamazoo County, it looks like, according to the sheet I saw, that we were 5% funded, and you think the world's coming to an end.
Right.
When in fact, I think we're on a good path, and several other folks who are also county commissioners also mentioned the fact that their counties had different methods and ways of dealing with the issue, and just not, throwing their hands up in the air and saying, what are we going to do? So there are different ways, I think, for planning for this, and that's one of the things I think they need to take a look at is what are the metrics there, what they're looking at from a snapshot, does that translate into being able not to pay for that, or being able to have a tremendous amount of general property or general fund money going into paying for what we call OPEB, other post-employment benefits.
Okay. So this is part of what happens in committee. You get to discuss these things and try to hammer this stuff out.
Right. We're going to have another meeting on it this week. See where we can get to. See if there's support in the committee for passing the bills out. I think there, I think there were some good things in the bill. 80/20, 80%, no more than 80% from the from local unit of government paying, no less than 20% for the employee. I think that's pretty much standard. The state of Michigan adopted that. Lots of counties, lots of municipalities have adopted that. But they're looking at units that aren't at that 80% funding, which most of them aren't, and making them go to that. I don't see anything wrong with that. There's a couple other issues in there, but sometimes the devil's in the details,
right? And
sometimes there's a lot of unintended consequences that we end up getting ourselves into if we just don't take the time to really look at the issue and look for those unintended consequences.
Some of the reaction I've heard is in the notion that a lame duck session might not be the place to take this up. But what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I know when we looked at our retiree health reform in Kalamazoo County, it took us about 6 months to do it, to look at all the issues, to look at some actuarial numbers, to look at what we needed to do to make sure that what we were getting ourselves into was going to be adequate, and that we weren't being short on the issues. So, again, my first lame duck, but something that's this important, that it has long-term consequences and possibility for unintended consequences. I think we need to take some time. We'll see what the committee says, but to me, we got time. This didn't occur overnight, this issue, and perhaps it might be better to gather more data, get more input. We still may come to the same conclusion that we would, but let's maybe slow this thing down a little bit. That's just my opinion as one committee member. So again, I think there's some good stuff in the bills. I'm just not sure if what we're looking at from a snapshot really is useful to tell us where communities are really at from a fiscal standpoint.
Representative Dave Maturen is here. Coming up in a minute, we'll talk about energy policy and some other things. Busy day, and we'll get to that in just a minute. 87.com. Representative Dave Maturen with us this half hour on WBCK. Talked more than once with Senator Mike Knopf, who chairs the Energy Committee in the Senate, about the energy policy legislation that has now passed the Senate. Looks like the House may take this up soon.
Well, yeah, we're looking at the two bills. I think it's 437 and 438 coming out of the Senate. 437, I guess, being perhaps the most controversial one, although there's some controversy in 438 also with net metering. I support the bills. I think they've been a very long, drawn, well thought out process. There are still folks that don't like it for various reasons, but as far as having sustainable energy, making sure it's reliable, it's essentially one of the biggest rubs is making the alternative energy suppliers, those folks outside of our normal utilities, and in this area, well, it could be American Electric Power, but essentially consumers in DTE, making sure that they have, when they have a contract with a customer, making sure they have adequate capacity, for at least a 3-year period to furnish them with power. Right now, the folks that are on choice, we call it, or retail open access, have the capability of, if their rates go up sky high or whatever it is, they can come back to the utility and say, here I am. Well, they have to build capacity in for that, and all of us are paying for that. All the rest of the taxpayers, not the taxpayers, but the utility ratepayers are paying for the ability for folks to come back. And I think it's only fair that when they want to go outside of the normal utility model and purchase power from one of the 5 alternative energy suppliers, one of whom is in Michigan and actually doesn't oppose the legislation, that they guarantee they have capacity. It's only fair. Somebody's got to pay for the grid. Somebody's got to pay for the infrastructure. And but that seems to be a hang-up for some folks. So we'll see what we can do to wade through it. We've got just a handful of days left in this session to get this done, and I know both Representative Nesbitt in the House and Senator Knopf in the Senate are both working on that package, and hopefully we can get it passed out.
Are there other concerns that you've noticed with this?
Well, there's a concern over net metering too, and I think it's 438. I do sit on the House Energy Policy Committee. Concerned about well, I think it's maybe more and more of a fairness thing. the folks that have the solar rooftop operations, they want to sell their electricity back to the power companies at the retail rate, and nobody in business buys at the retail rate. You know, the grocer down the street doesn't pay 79 cents for a can of corn and sell it to you for 79 cents. Somebody's got to pay for, again, that infrastructure that's there. So part of the issue with net metering is wanting to have those folks that do have the solar rooftops sell the electricity back to the utilities at more of a wholesale rate.
Yeah.
So somebody's paying for that grid.
What's your sense in committee there? Is this going to be hard to hurdle, or is it going to be worked out?
Well, I probably should be a better parliamentarian than I am. I'm learning. I think actually the two Senate bills are over in the House itself, so the entire House will be taken up and will come to committee.
Okay.
From what I understand.
Right. All right.
So I think right now it's close. I know folks are trying to see what objections some of the other people have, and a lot of the the Michigan Chamber's on board. Obviously, the utilities are. There's lots and lots of folks that have signed on to it. Lots of business groups. Midland Cogeneration Venture up in Midland is. So there's lots of folks that have signed on to say this is an appropriate approach to energy reliability, sustainability in the state of Michigan. And I really think we need to be in control of our own fate. If we don't do this, then we're leaving it up to the federal government to kind of dictate for us what's going on, and I don't think that's anywhere we want to be.
Representative Dave Maturen with a number of things here on the lame duck session list. In fact, we'll pick up where we leave off in just a minute on WBCK 820. WBCK, we're here with Representative Dave Maturen for a few more minutes. Nothing like a deadline, as I always say. It's human nature, I guess, when there's a deadline to try and crunch a bunch of stuff in or say, oh, we better get to that. So there's more. Yeah, there's more. You've been working on a bill. This is 5748, which actually has been approved, and it has something to do with the Children with Special Needs Fund. What's this about?
Well, right now there's a fund set up. It's got about $20 million in it, and the interest, the dividends from that fund are used to provide children that do have special needs with wheelchairs and ramps and that kind of stuff, and can't afford it, to provide them with the with the means to try to carry on as good as they can of a normal childhood. And right now they're limited by the investments they can make. I think they're very, very conservative investments they can make. And my bill will simply allow them to use the same sort of criteria that the public employee retirement system has when they're making an investment. So they're not taking high flyer on some internet stock. I mean, they're still going to be a very, very safe investment, but it's going to allow them to get additional interest. Every on the $20 million, every 1% increase is another $200,000 they can spend. Okay. So I think it's kind of a no-brainer. It's something that's safe, and plus there's a safeguard put in that the fund can't fall below $18 million, so it's not like everything's going to be lost. So it's going to be the same people that invest in our public pension retirement system at the state. I think they do a very good job, and so it's just something that makes sense. It's off to pass the House, off to the Senate, and hopefully they'll see the wisdom into taking that up in a little bit of time that's left, along with a whole host of other bills that are sitting over there.
There's a deadline over there, too.
Yeah.
Okay. Something else you've worked on is something that is an issue that we're well acquainted with in Battle Creek. That's TIFAs, Tax Increment Finance Authorities. There's been some discussion here, too.
Well, we passed a package of bills. I took one of the bills. Essentially, what it does, it basically puts in a lot of transparency. We know that there are a lot of TIF districts that don't even report, and they should be reporting under the statute. They don't, so we're making sure that they report in a reasonable fashion. I don't think it's anything draconian. If you're going to be capturing, and they capture the property values, increase in values from all the other units of government that would use it. And if you're going to be doing that, if you're going to be quote-unquote taking other people's money, I think you got an obligation to tell them how you're spending it, where you're spending it, exactly what kind of money you're raising. It also prohibits, though, a TIF district that's in existence from capturing a new millage. So say you put a district together 10 years ago, and then Kalamazoo County just passed a new homeless millage, a tenth of a mill.
Right.
they might be able to capture some of that, and it wasn't even on the radar screen when they established the district. So the one of the aspects of the bill, besides transparency, is just not allowing those new millages that were passed after the district was established from being captured. I think that makes sense, and you know, that's part of our package. The Senate sent over a library exemption millage, and that passed the House tax policy. I'm not sure where it's going to go on the floor of the House, but that was the library's attempt to say, hey, you know, we're tired of watching, in some cases, a fair amount of the money that people actually vote for libraries ends up going for everything but libraries. So I think it's an attempt to say, look, the voters vote an extra voted millage. They come out and vote something, just like in Kalamazoo County we have a law enforcement millage that's dedicated to the courts and police and the whole judicial system. I think people expect that money to be going there, not to a facade in a downtown building or a new pedestrian path.
Okay. It seems like adding transparency into something like a tax increment finance authority would be a no-brainer, but sometimes this wording doesn't end up in these things.
Well, it doesn't, and I think, you know, some of the opposition said, well, some of the communities that have these, they're DDAs, they're CIAs, corridor improvement authorities. There's about 9 of them that are out there with potential for tax capture, and some of them are too small, quote unquote. They say the reporting is going to be onerous. Look, again, if you're capturing taxes that should go to another unit of government, you have an obligation to simply do some good reporting. I think is you know, it's, again, transparency. I think is a very positive thing to have.
All right, so the deadline is looming. I guess we should stop talking to you and let you get back to work.
I've got several things I'm working on this morning when I get back to my office, not in Lansing, but my office locally here, and so I'm looking forward to the next couple weeks here.
Yeah,
and it's going to be fast and furious.
All right, and then we'll be in touch again soon.
My pleasure.
All right, so Representative Dave Maturen with us in this legislative update on WBCK 8.